up in this order. Because excluding this one, we believe that typically, if our favourite guitar player, Mr. John Mayer, is using these pedals, and he does indeed often have all three of these kinds of pedals on his board, this is the order that we most.
Je passe mes vieux crayons.
The beauty with overdrive pedals is there is no rule about the order. You can stack them up however you want to get the sound that you like. Half the fun of having pedals is being able to do that.
Exactly.
So let's go to the tube screamer first. Each of these pedals has three knobs on them. That's pretty typical of an overdrive pedal.
Ouais.
One knob will do the amount of drive. Sometimes you'll hear that.
Gain, volume,
Another
tone.
knob will do the volume level, so that might again be called level or volume. And then the final one is a tone control. So all three of these just have a single turn the tone down to go darker, turn it up to go brighter. Some versions of these might have either bass, middle, treble or something like that. Anyway, I'm going to start with the tube screamer because it's the most copied circuit.
Very iconic.
Ouais, le tube screamer, ouais.
Its lower gain range with the tone in the middle, you'll hear a sound. It's very natural sounding. It does, some of the things that are synonymous with tube screamer is it does put a slight mid boost and a slight mid cut in there. Again, aiming at guitar players that want to perhaps use the tube screamer as like a solo boost or something like that.
Push it out between. It's like a nasally type vibe, isn't it?
If I go as extreme as I can, so the minimum amount of drive on here, do we get any level? Absolutely. So again, you can see very natural sounding, very much like a valve amplifier pushed slightly into distortion.
Yeah, absolutely.
You will, interestingly, we're using valve amplifiers in this video. You may find that some of the pure volume boost that we're putting into these amplifiers is, again, making the actual amp circuit go into a mild overdrive as well.
Yeah, it pushes the front end of it.
Not all amplifiers will do that, so if you have an amplifier with a sort of a digital preamp in it or something like that, you may find it reacts slightly differently to this, but that's the general idea. We're going to try and get most of the overdrive from the pedal on the clean amplifier, and then when we go to the distorted sound, what you'll hear the pedal doing is doing two things. One is it will be adding a little bit of distortion from the pedal, but it'll also be actually pushing the amp harder, so causing the amp to overdrive.
Yeah.
Anyway, right, let's go through all of the different sort of gain spectrum of the tube screamer whilst Pete's playing. Really cool about an overdrive pedal is they're generally the really dynamic ones. So I think we'll get a much bigger range of overdrive from Pete playing soft to hard than we will necessarily just from turning the drive all the way down, all the way off. So perhaps you want to.
And also, if I used, I said I was going to say, let me just go on to the pickup because if we go. I think tube screamer is in that camp where when we move on to the roots breaker, there's a bigger difference between playing softly on a neck pickup, but that's because of the circuit inside, which we're not going to do.
So that's that one. I'll do a quick whiz round the tone.
Yeah.
Tone, I think, on these is always, you'll probably find that your amp and guitar have a natural tonality. And all you really want to do with this tone control is kind of compensate to make it a tiny bit brighter or a tiny bit darker. If you use it on the extremes, I think it becomes slightly more unusable, but you'll see what I mean by that.
Yeah, that was too much on each
Yeah,
side.
so I would have said that Pete's guitar is at the brighter end of the guitar spectrum. So again, you're really just talking about making a small compensation on the tone to get it just where you want it. But all the way off or all the way up is probably too much in my opinion.
Ain't nobody gonna need that.
There is a lot of people will use a tube screamer or an overdrive pedal generally just to get volume boost. So now what we'll do is if I leave the guitar, well, in fact, are we at unity maybe roughly here? So you can see around there we're not making any difference to the volume of the pedal. It would be unusual to turn down from there. You wouldn't normally hit a drive pedal and want it to be quieter. But let's see how much volume boost we've got here. Quite a bit of volume boost.
Yeah. Still got that nasally sound to it though. There's a distinctive tube screamer sound, isn't
Yeah,
it?
there's so many guitar players that are synonymous with that sound, and then there's a big school of thought of people who don't like that nasally thing. So you decide.
Wait for
You
life.
decide.
Wait for life.
Indeed. So before we move on to the next pedal, let's hear a tube screamer over an overdriven sound. Now, typically, again, if you've got overdrive on your amp already, we're not necessarily looking to introduce a bucket load more overdrive. We just want to lift the whole sound. So typically, you'll see a setting much more like this on an amplifier if you've got overdrive. So let's have a little listen.
Je regarde une vidéo sur les overdrive
Now, very little volume
parce
difference
que
at all
je suis
there.
en train de
There is a technical
changer mon
reason for that.
pedalboard.
We wouldn't go super technical, but, you know,
Pédalier de guitare.
once that sine wave starts to clip, which
Ah.
is the clipping that introduces the distortion, the more level that you put into it, the more the
Ah.
clipping increases, but not the volume. So
Ah, voyons, je suis vraiment.
that's why I think it's the EQ part of the.
Je suis habitué de mettre du mascara.
Yeah, it pushes the whole thing out more. Absolutely. I mean, you can get tube screamer clones
Mais
that's
partout.
got a dry
Yeah.
knob on it, so you can introduce the dry signal of the amplifier and mix those two to the amps and the gain in. That's quite clever. That's a clever upgrade, I think.
Could you do a bit of a solo? Because I think that's
Yeah.
again where you might. Let's do that again without it.
Non! Il y a le petit gars qui court partout. Le nouveau petit minou. Mais il peut pas venir dans la chambre ici, le petit minou. Puis il s'essaye. Mais vu qu'il y a une clochette, on l'entend.
Okay, blues breaker next.
Yes.
Same three, not same basic idea, but a different kind of tone. Now one of the things that is characteristic of the original blues breaker,
Bruce Breaker's big thing.
is not a lot happens in terms of gain until you're up to probably that final third.
Yeah.
But we'll start at the 12 o'clock just so that you can see.
In fact, nothing
We
happens.
lose a lot, don't we?
Yeah, I've used that sometimes at home. People say, oh, you know, I can't, my tube amp's too loud. I would use an overdrive and put it on and then turn it down. So, because if you can't turn the amp down, if you don't have a master on the amp, actually, this is pretty cool at home.
So where
Non!
unity
Pete's
roughly?
J'entends le petit gars. Il s'essaye. Il veut rentrer, mais moi je veux pas. Non! C'était mignon.
Yeah, Yeah, and interestingly, if you read, when you've got other pedal brands who do their versions of the blues breaker, quite often they'll try to compensate that. So
that would be 12 o'clock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's have a look at our gain range on the blues breaker. I think this is probably the least gainy of all the pedals we've got on here.
C'est pas le record de la routine la plus rapide aujourd'hui, certain. De la misère avec mes wings. Juste moi, ça va être cute. Juste par respect. Hein. Parce que c'est la fête à ma mère. Ah, je suis rendu au bout de mon crayon. Je suis rendu au bout de mon crayon. On va sortir un autre. Je suis rendu pas mal au moment de switcher pour mon nouveau gear. Là. Pour mon crayon à sourcils, crayon Cover Girl, avec la petite brosse au bout. Il faut que j'en rajoute un autre.
What's the fancy word for it? Transparent. Yeah. It doesn't give you the same range of gain on the pickups.
Anyway, there's our blues breaker kind of.
Comme d'habitude, je me dessine le sourcil.
You're absolutely right. It's not introducing that mid-boost and slightly sort of more muffled kind of tone. Transparent is probably the best word for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most of these pedals, I suppose, you are going to see guitar players using them in conjunction with another source of drive, whether that's from another pedal or from the amp. So let's have a little listen to the...
Yeah, so we're back to this.
Ah, je vais le garder pour sa pointe. Je vais le garder pour son... Peigner les sourcils, les cils aussi. Nouveau crayon.
It's a tighter low end and more top end in the blues breaker.
Much brighter.
Yeah.
Much brighter.
Yeah.
Gain-wise, again, if I'm down to here, unlike the tube screamer, which can have a low drive setting but with plenty of level, it does feel if I'm not driving the gain, it's definitely removing. Rather, if you. Breaker kind of circuits. Like I say, we'll stack these at the end of this video so you can get an idea. But I think you can see probably why the Ibanez has been copied more, because it does feel like it's a slightly more versatile kind of.
You think?
Yeah.
See, that's funny. I think the other one is more versatile. But this is why you have to find the one that's right for you, right?
Right. Let's go to toneless, which again, as I said at the beginning, is our clone. So we'll start now. I should say there are some schools of thought that think that toneless is more, should be classed as a distortion pedal rather than overdrive pedal.
Yeah, clipping is different.
My sort of gut feeling is it still sits in that low to mid gain setting, rather, but hey, you choose. Right, so we're on the clean sound.
We're back on the clean.
12 o'clock.
Sound, man.
It hasn't taken any of the bass end away at all. In fact, if anything, I think it is one of those sounds where you can still hear that clean tone.
Yeah, and much more transparent.
Yeah.
So we're going from less to more transparent.
Let's see. Let's do a quick.
Okay, let's
so
do it.
Tons of level boost out of the clon, and it's a great sounding pedal.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
So we'll just go through its, whilst Pete's playing, we'll go through its kind of game. I mean, 1,000,000%'s got a foot in both the overdrive
Yeah.
and the distortion pedal.
Much more gain. Much
Yeah.
more gain.
I
Thick,
love-
fat gain.
I love this pedal. I kind
It's
of
so
feel
good.
like it's my. What I will tend to do on my board is I will use a different pedal or the amplifier to get the basic overdrive tone that I
Yeah.
like, and then every single time if I want to lift it for any kind of more gain, solo, anything like that, it's toneless all
Yeah.
the way. Oh, you know, other clones are available.
It's funny though when you say that, because I find like if you're sitting in a room like we are now, it fattens up all the sound, but that might not be a good idea again if you're going live.
This is true.
That's why the tube screen was such a good
Yeah.
companion to that pedal. I think those two pedals, these three pedals are just made for each other.
This is true. Right, I'll do a quick idea of what the I didn't on the blueprint. Did I? I'm so sorry, but it's a quick whiz through of the tone on the toneless. Same kind of vibe as the Ibanez, really.
N'est-ce point merveilleux?
Just what you do the tone on the blueprint.
On met du blush. Let's go. Puis je vais sûrement mettre une petite boucle.
They'll do the same thing, really, don't they?
Boucle en
Let's hear a
cuir.
toneless over.
Yeah.
En arrière, la boucle en arrière. On va voir. Premièrement pour le visage. T'en laisses le bout de tes doigts comme ça. Là, moi, je vais en mettre sur mes joues. Parce que c'est ici que je vais en mettre.
Do that lead solo bit without.
Là, mon primer. Là, si je rajoute de quoi, ben là, ça va coller sur ma peau. C'est ça qui permet que la poudre colle sur la peau. Ça va primer. Si t'as pas de primer, ça tiendra jamais. Je dis ça de même. J'ai cette belle petite tête-là qui est un petit peu en angle. Je trouve que ça pourrait être bien pour me dessiner des petites pommettes. Là, je prends le Maxi Blush. Maxi Blush, full pas cher. Comme dit ma nièce, c'est un essentiel. C'est un blush qui est pas cher, puis qui est bien coloré. T'sais. Il colore bien. Oh! J'ai juste passé un petit peu, puis...
Yeah. Rebecca's favorite.
It is, isn't it?
Again, it gets that when you're spit and swapping between the two pickups, when you're playing softly. It's got that thing going on.
I think that's probably
J'en ai trop mis.
Probably don't do that
je vais
It's the most
blurrer un peu.
dynamic, cleans up the most and plays softly. Okay, let's have a little listen to the game names on here.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I agree. Let's have a listen over what doesn't really, it's a brighter overdrive, loads of dynamics. Doesn't really sound like there's a EQ curve in the same way that
No.
the tube screen is doing.
I'd say it's in between the blues drive and the clone. I think it's sitting right in between
Yeah.
those two pedals.
Yeah.
That is not too much gain, but you get all the volume in it as well.
Let's have a listen.
Same tone. Here's the pedal.
Ça, j'allais cette pédale-là. C'est une blues driver. J'avais quelques petits poils de nez qui étaient longs et qui me dérangeaient. Je les ai coupés.
It's a good sound.
It's a good sound. Then it's easy to put two gain
Yeah.
on the blues breaker.
I think
Easier.
the clone is similar. I think the clone is similar. It's easy to put too much gain in it.
Bijoux droit.
That sounds good.
It is a good sound.
And it's bomb proof, isn't it? You know that. It's just going to last.
I think all of these are pretty bomb. I mean, to be fair, Ibanez have been making the tube screen for about 40-something years, haven't they? If you could only have one, is there a standout for you?
I only could have one. I mean, I'm really fan of the blues breaker type tone.
Interesting.
I would probably take the blues drive actually.
Interesting.
Either that or the clone.
Yeah, I think
The clone.
I'd probably have the clone.
Yeah, the clone,
if I could
I
only
think.
have one.
But it's because I think. Man.
I think.
Luckily, I don't have to.
I mean, interestingly for me, I'd probably put the blues breaker in last place with regard. Like, I'd ultimately
Yeah.
probably would want all four,
Yeah.
but I'd go. I want that one first. Can't decide between these two. Probably maybe drawn to that just because it's so classic. But one of
Yeah.
these, and then that would be my last. Like that would be the little sprinkle of just.
But I tell you what, this is so in between those two pedals
Yeah.
that it's almost like this I would go for because it
Yeah.
sounds. It can do almost those two. It doesn't have the volume. Has it got the volume boost of the clone?
I don't
Can we
know
just
that
see
any
it?
of this- okay.
Clean up again.
Crikey. Let's see which one has the most volume boost then between the two here. So maximum volume.
Oh, il va falloir nettoyer mes lunettes, sont sales.
That sounds exactly like it.
I don't know, I think that's got quite a bit more bass then. The drums
I like
feels
that.
to me like it's pushing the mid-range. I'm sort of,
Here's a test.
I'm going to do
Here's
them
a
all
test.
like this now actually. Just
Can I
like,
just do a test for you?
Yeah.
Right. With your one note, just do this. Okay, 'cause
Loving this
that's what
test.
Tron does.
Okay. The tube
It
breaker,
doesn't
is
do
it?
that.
That's right, okay, keep going.
C'est pour ça que le Blues Driver est un petit peu plus transparent que les autres pédales d'overdrive.
And then the Tron is going to do it. I'll say.
Donc c'est un souper de famille, c'est pour la fête à ma mère.
So there's a compression going on in the clone pedal that I've sort of figured out over the years that if
Belle
you
par
want that,
respect.
the clone gives you that compressed feedback. And obviously this does too. So these two pedals are the same. I'll go for that.
What I'm gonna do now, last thing is
This sounds good, man.
I'm gonna get a basic rhythm tone out of the blues driver into a clean amp,
Yeah.
and then see how these stack and all
Yeah,
that kind of
okay.
stuff. And then we're done basically. So
Yeah.
J'ai celle-là, ma belle boucle. J'ai ma boucle de Kuromi aussi. Une petite boucle, ça. La boucle que je vais mettre, ça va être celle-là.
Isn't that funny how so it's a drop there? How when they put the clon in, how it gets that. The other two
Going on, hasn't it? Of just, I think it's just such a forward-facing mid-range boost. Hopefully, this has done a couple of things. One
Voilà
is
mon
it's
style
actually
d'aujourd'hui.
reinforced the fact that, you don't have to
Pour la
get
fête à
too
ma mamie.
wound up about, oh, have I got the
Je
right
lui ai pas souhaité bonne fête parce que je veux qu'elle pense que je l'ai oublié.
They're all trying to push your guitar sound into
Parce qu'elle pense tout le temps que je l'oublie.
overdrive to a certain
Je l'oublie pas, en fait, c'est écrit sur mon calendrier. Fait que là, je l'ai pas souhaité bonne fête parce que je veux qu'elle pense que je l'oublie, que j'ai l'oublié. Mais non, je vais me présenter, on va aller manger ensemble, je vais lui souhaiter bonne fête là. Laver les dents aussi, juste.
But there you are. Here's a really handy guide.
please, let's get to that. We can.
I've got one more thing.
All right, 9/11s.
I've got a bonus thing for the end of this video. I've got presents for you all. I wanted to do this on camera. So, you obviously remember we did the 6-0 thing.
Oh, j'avais pas mis cette robe-là.
Do you want to invite Oz up? There you are, Mr. Pete. There is a 6-0 for you.
Ça donne une belle. J'aime beaucoup cette robe-là. J'aime comment elle couvre mes épaules aussi. C'est juste parfait.
Oh, that's awesome. I love this bell. That's so good. Thank you.
Et en dessous, parce que c'est l'hiver, j'ai mis mes collants. C'est mes collants en fausse peau, doublés. Super pratique quand on est une femme transgenre et qu'on veut porter des belles choses et rester féminine en hiver. Parce que c'est pas à cause que c'est l'hiver qu'on peut pas être cute.
Oui, je connais. Mais pourquoi vous montrez votre tub?
Donc voilà, my outfit of the day pour un événement spécial. La fête à ma mamie. Il y a juste mes bas qui dépassent. Check, un petit bout de blanc. Donc voilà, avec mes leggings polaires doublés. Là. C'est juste que ça glisse puis ça tombe tout le temps, cette affaire. Mais bon. Voilà. Ça, c'est la version 2. La version 2 du outfit. C'est dans le fond, je mets un gilet par-dessus puis je fais dépasser mes... C'est la version 2. C'est la version quand t'as frette. Donc voilà, je me trouve très jolie aujourd'hui. J'espère recevoir des beaux compliments. Ça serait gentil. Concernant ma coiffure, par exemple. Qui a changé un petit peu. Parce que j'ai pas reçu beaucoup de compliments sur ma coiffure parce que je suis en vacances. Mais bon, voilà. Je suis vraiment contente de sortir ce soir pour la fête à ma mère. De célébrer. Après des moments un petit peu plus seul. Donc, pour établir l'équilibre.